The late afternoon sun hit my chrome pipes just right, making them flare like they were on fire as I rolled up to the chain-link fence. Inside the yard, I saw a kid, couldn't have been more than 6, standing by himself near the swing set, staring off at absolutely nothing. His shirt hung loose on his frame, his arms too skinny, and his eyes looked empty in a way no kid's eyes ever should. I cut the engine, and when the noise died, the quiet felt heavier than any roar I'd ever ridden through. Before I go on, let me ask you something. Where in the world are you watching this from? And if stories like this matter to you, consider subscribing to the channel. Hit the hype button, spread some love, spread some respect. It means more than you think. I'd ridden through towns worse than Pinewood, but I'd never passed through one that felt this forgotten. The streets were split and broken. Storefronts were boarded up. A sun-bleached banner sagged across Main Street, barely holding on. Annual Harvest Fair, canceled. Even the words looked tired. I'd been on the road for 2 straight days, ever since I got a call from an old friend, Father Rico. He ran a group home on the edge of town and said he needed help fixing the place up. I wasn't the kind of man people called for help anymore. Not after everything. But Rico had a way of reaching into the past and dragging people back, even men like me. The group home sat at the end of a gravel road, a low brick building with white shutters peeling like old scars. Near the door, someone had painted a sign by hand, Hope House. I stayed on my bike for a long minute, boots pressed into the gravel, staring at that word. Hope. I didn't believe in it. Not after what I'd seen. Not after the things I'd done. Rico opened the door before I could knock. He was older now, hair gone gray, lines deeper in his face, but when he shook my hand, his grip was still solid. Didn't think you'd actually come, he said, stepping aside. I shrugged. You asked. Inside, the place smelled like old wood mixed with something warm baking. A handful of kids sat at a long table in the common room, bent over their homework. When I walked in, every head lifted. Their eyes went straight to the leather vest, the ink on my arms, the Reaper patch stitched across my back. I knew exactly what they saw. One of the older boys leaned over and whispered something to a girl beside him. She shook her head and looked away. Rico led me down the hall to a cramped back office stuffed with file boxes and broken furniture. Roof's leaking, he said, pointing at a dark water stain spreading across the ceiling. Plumbing's shot in 2 bathrooms, and the heating system's barely hanging on. I nodded. I'll take a look. The first day I stayed up on the roof, patching holes and swapping out busted shingles. The work was steady and quiet. It kept my hands busy and my head clear, away from memories I didn't want crawling back in. By mid-afternoon, some of the kids wandered into the yard below, playing tag. Their laughter floated up through the trees. I watched for a second, then went back to hammering. One kid didn't join them. He sat alone on the porch steps, knees pulled tight to his chest, staring down at the dirt. I'd noticed him the day before, the same kid I'd seen by the swing set. Thin, silent, and carrying something heavy behind his eyes. When I climbed down, he was still there. I wiped the sweat off my forehead and walked over. You got a name? I asked. He looked up like I'd startled him. Isaiah. I sat beside him, leaving a little space between us. You always sit by yourself like this? Isaiah shrugged. We stayed quiet for a bit. The other kids were louder now, running wild across the yard. Isaiah didn't even glance their way. You scared of me? I asked. He shook his head. No. Good, I said. Don't be. I pulled a bottle of water from my pocket and handed it to him. He took it but didn't drink, just held it tight between both hands. You been here long? I asked. 2 years. Where were you before? His jaw clenched, just a little. Somewhere worse. I nodded and let it be. I'd learned a long time ago that some stories only come out when they're ready, and forcing them just shuts people down. You got anyone looking out for you here? I asked. His voice dropped. Father Rico. He's good. I stood up, brushing dirt off my jeans. Then you're lucky. I turned to walk away, but his voice stopped me. You gonna stay? I turned back. He was really looking at me now, like he needed the answer to matter. Why? I asked. His reply came quiet, almost like he didn't want to hear himself say it. Because nobody ever does. That night, I sat alone in the small room Rico had set aside for me. A narrow cot, a lamp, one window facing the woods. I stared down at my hands, scarred knuckles, faded ink, calluses from years of holding things I shouldn't have held. My phone buzzed. A text from Spade. My VP back in Oregon. You good? I typed back, yeah. I wasn't. I'd left the club 3 months earlier. Not officially. I just rode out one morning and never came back. No explanation. No goodbye. I figured they'd come looking eventually. Maybe they already were. But right now, I needed space. From them, and from myself. I kept thinking about Isaiah's question. You gonna stay? I didn't have an answer. I never stayed anywhere long. Staying meant attachment. Attachment always led to pain. I'd learned that lesson the hard way. Still, something about this place, and about that kid, made me hesitate. Maybe it was the way Isaiah looked at me, like I was more than the patches on my back. The next morning, I found him in the kitchen before breakfast. He was scrubbing dishes that were already clean, moving like a machine. You always up this early? I asked. He didn't turn around. I like helping. I poured myself a cup of coffee and watched him work. The way his shoulders stiffened when footsteps got close. The way he flinched at sudden sounds. And that's when I knew. This kid wasn't just quiet. He was braced for something that had already happened. Something settled heavy in my chest when I watched Isaiah that morning. I recognized it right away. I'd worn that same posture years ago. I'd seen it every time I looked in the mirror back then. You eat yet? I asked. Isaiah shook his head. I grabbed a couple of plates and cracked some eggs. Nothing special, just scrambled eggs and toast. I slid one plate in front of him and sat across the table. He stared at the food like it might vanish if he blinked. Go on, I said. He ate slow and careful, the way kids do when they've learned not to expect seconds. We sat there in silence until Father Rico walked in and stopped short. Early birds, he said, smiling tiredly. I just nodded. Over the next week, I stayed busy. I fixed the plumbing, replaced rotted boards on the porch, rewired 2 of the bedrooms. The work gave my hands something to do, but my eyes kept drifting back to Isaiah, whether I wanted them to or not. He was always off to the side. Always cleaning, fixing, helping. Always trying to disappear. One afternoon, I was swapping out a broken window when Isaiah showed up beside me, holding a screwdriver like it was something important. Can I help? He asked. I hesitated, then nodded. Hold this steady. We worked without talking. His hands were small but steady, careful in a way that told me he paid attention. He didn't need things repeated. When we finished, he stepped back and studied the window like he was proud of it. Later, I found Rico slumped in his chair, rubbing his eyes. Isaiah came to us 2 years ago, he said quietly. The state pulled him from his mother's care. She had a boyfriend. He paused. It was bad, Garrett. Really bad. My jaw tightened. Where's the boyfriend now? Prison. 7 years. Not long enough, I said. Rico didn't argue. Isaiah won't talk about it. Refuses the counselor. Just works, keeps to himself. I've tried reaching him, but he's locked up tight. I stared at the wall, my thoughts turning. He got family? Anyone at all? His mother's still nearby. Clean now, supposedly. She's petitioning to get him back. I snapped my head toward him. You're serious? The state believes in reunification when possible. She finished her program, has a job, passed the home inspection. That kid is terrified. I cut in, my voice hard. You send him back there, you're signing his death warrant. Rico's face twisted with pain. I don't make those calls. The court does. I stood up so fast my chair scraped the floor and walked out without saying another word. I found Isaiah in the yard, sitting under an oak tree with a book he clearly wasn't reading. He looked up when I approached. Mind if I sit? I asked. He nodded. We sat shoulder to shoulder, watching the other kids play basketball on the cracked court. The sun was sinking, washing everything in gold and orange. You ever think about leaving this place? I asked carefully. His fingers tightened around the book. Sometimes. Where would you go? His voice dropped to almost nothing. Somewhere nobody knows me. I understood that too well. I'd spent half my life trying to outrun my own name. You know you're safe here, right? I said. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence told me everything. I wanted to promise him things would be okay, that nothing bad would ever touch him again. But I'd made too many promises in my life that didn't hold. I wasn't adding another. If you ever need anything, I said instead, you come find me. Deal? He looked at me with those tired, too old eyes. Okay. 2 days later, I was down in the basement working on the furnace when raised voices echoed from upstairs. I dropped my tools and took the stairs 2 at a time. In the hallway, Rico stood between Isaiah and a woman I didn't recognize. She was thin, blonde, Her makeup stretched thin over years of hard living. "He's my son," she snapped. "I have a right to see him." Isaiah stood frozen, all the color drained from his face. Rico lifted his hands. "Mrs. Brennan, we talked about this. Supervised visits only. They need to be scheduled." "I just want to talk to him," she cut in, reaching past Rico toward Isaiah. The boy stepped back, breathing fast and shallow. "I didn't think. I just moved." I stepped between them, filling the narrow hallway. "Visit's over," I said quietly. Her eyes went wide when she saw me. "Who the hell are you? You telling me to leave?" She turned to Rico. "You're going to let him talk to me like that?" Rico's voice stayed firm. "Mrs. Brennan, please leave. We'll contact you about rescheduling." Her face twisted with rage, but she backed up. "This isn't over," she said, pointing at Isaiah. "You're coming home, baby. Mama's gonna make everything right." Isaiah didn't say a word. He stared at the floor, his whole body locked tight. When she finally slammed the front door behind her, the hallway fell silent. Rico rested a hand on Isaiah's shoulder. "You okay?" Isaiah nodded, but I saw the lie plain as day. He turned and hurried down the hall toward his room, his footsteps echoing. Rico let out a long breath. "That could have gone worse." "She shouldn't be anywhere near him," I said coldly. "The court disagrees," Rico replied. "She has rights." "So does he." Rico studied me for a long moment. "I know you mean well, but this isn't your fight." I didn't answer. I just walked back down to the basement where my tools waited. My hands were shaking too much to work. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the cot, staring at the wall, listening to the old house creak and shift as it settled for the night. Around midnight, I heard it, soft footsteps in the hallway, then a sound that stopped me cold. Crying. I pulled on my boots and stepped out into the hall. Isaiah was curled up on the floor outside his room, arms locked around his knees, trying to smother his sobs. I lowered myself beside him, leaving some space. I didn't say a word. I just sat there in the dark, letting him know he wasn't by himself. After a while, his breathing evened out. "I don't want to go back," he whispered. My chest tightened. "I know. She says she's different now," he said, his voice shaking. "But people don't change. Not really." I thought about my own life, the violence, the wasted years, the man I'd been before everything came apart. "Sometimes they do," I said quietly. "But you don't have to believe it just because someone says it." He wiped his face with his sleeve. "What if they make me go anyway?" I didn't have an answer. I wanted to tell him I'd protect him, that I wouldn't let anyone hurt him again. But the world doesn't work like that. Not for kids like Isaiah. Not for men like me. "You've got people here who care," I said instead. "Rico, the staff, they're not going to let you walk into something bad without a fight." He looked at me. "What about you?" The question hit harder than I expected. "What about me?" He pressed. "Are you going to fight for me?" I met his eyes and saw myself there. Young, scared, hoping someone would finally give a damn. "Yeah," I said. "I am." He nodded slowly, then stood. "Thank you." He went back into his room, closing the door quietly behind him. I stayed in that hallway for a long time, my thoughts running in circles. I'd just made a promise. Now I had to figure out how to keep it. The next morning, I walked into town and found the county courthouse. The clerk at the front desk looked me over like she didn't trust a thing about me. "I need information on a custody case," I said. "Isaiah Brennan." Her expression hardened. "Are you family?" "No." "Then I can't help you." I leaned against the counter. "I'm not here to cause problems. I just need to know what's happening with this kid." "Privacy laws," she said firmly. "If you're not on the case, I can't discuss it." I thanked her and walked out. I stood on the courthouse steps watching people come and go, lawyers in suits, parents with worn-out faces. A system that moved way too slow for the people who needed it most. I pulled out my phone and made a call. It rang 3 times before a woman answered. "Garrett Kane," she said. "Didn't think I'd hear from you again." "Hey, Maya. I need a favor." Maya Chin had been the club's lawyer years back, the one who handled arrests and kept guys out of prison. She'd left that life behind and built her own practice in family law. "What kind of favor?" she asked, cautious. "A kid. Custody case. I need to know his options." There was a pause. "This isn't club business, is it?" "No," I said. "This is personal." She agreed to meet me at a diner on the edge of town. She showed up 20 minutes late, carrying a leather briefcase, dressed in a sharp gray suit. Her hair was cut short now. "You look different," I said as she slid into the booth. So do you, she said, less angry. She ordered coffee and studied me. Tell me about the kid. I told her everything. Isaiah, his mother, the visits, the fear. She listened without interrupting, jotting notes on a legal pad. When I finished, she set her pen down and sighed. Reunification is the goal in these cases. If the mother completed treatment and met the requirements, the court will probably side with her. Even if the kid's terrified? Unfortunately, she said, yes, unless there's proof of ongoing danger or violations of the plan. So he's just stuck, I said. She looked at me carefully. Unless someone files for guardianship. Someone stable. Clean background checks. Someone who genuinely cares about the kid. I went still. You're talking about me. I'm talking about anyone qualified, she said. Are you? I drove back to Hope House with her words bouncing around my head. Are you qualified? My record wasn't clean. Old assault charges. Ties to the Hells Angels. A life lived on the wrong side of most lines. But I'd walked away. 3 months out. No contact. No violence. Trying to build something better, even if I didn't know what that looked like yet. When I pulled up, Isaiah was sitting on the porch steps again. He looked up when I shut off the engine. Where'd you go? He asked. I sat beside him. Had a meeting. About you. His face drained of color. What kind of meeting? The kind where I figure out how to keep you safe. He studied my face, searching for something. Why do you care? It was a fair question. One I'd been asking myself the whole drive back. Because someone should have cared about me when I was your age, I said finally. Nobody did. I don't want that for you. Isaiah went quiet. So what happens now? Isaiah asked. Now I talk to Rico, I said. Then I start making calls. Father Rico sat across from me in his office, his face calm but guarded. Guardianship, he repeated slowly. You want to file for guardianship of Isaiah? Yeah. He leaned back in his chair. Garrett, I respect what you've done here. The repairs, the time you've spent with him. But this isn't just goodwill. This is a lifetime commitment. I know that. Do you? His voice stayed gentle, but there was weight behind it. This means background checks, home inspections, interviews. They'll dig into your past, your history with the club, your record. And even if you clear all that, you're taking responsibility for a traumatized child. He'll need stability, therapy, patience, possibly years of healing. Are you ready for that? I held his gaze. I don't know if I'm ready, but I know he needs someone who won't walk away. And I won't. Rico studied me for a long time. Finally, he nodded. Then I'll support your petition. But understand this, the state will fight you. And so will his mother. It's going to get ugly. I've dealt with ugly before, I said. Rico almost smiled. Yeah, I believe you have. The next week moved fast. Maya filed the paperwork. Social services scheduled a home inspection at my apartment. A small one-bedroom I rented 2 towns over. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean. I'd even bought a twin bed and set it up in the corner, just in case. The social worker, Mrs. Halloway, walked through with a clipboard, checking smoke detectors, window locks, food in the fridge. You understand this would change your life completely, she said, not looking up. I do. And you're prepared to handle transportation? School, doctors, therapy? Yes. She finally looked at me. Mr. Kane, I'm required to ask, do you have any ongoing ties to the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club? I'd been expecting that. No, ma'am. I walked away 3 months ago. No contact since. And if they come looking for you, they won't find Isaiah involved, I said. If they find me, I'll handle it. That's on me. She made another note. We'll be in touch. 2 weeks passed without a word. I stayed busy at Hope House, fixing things that didn't really need fixing. Isaiah asked questions sometimes. Where I lived, if I had a TV, if there was a yard. Small questions that carried a lot of hope inside them. Then one afternoon, Maya called. We have a hearing, she said. Next Thursday. The judge wants to review both petitions, yours and the mother's reunification plan. What are our chances? I asked. Honestly, 50-50. You've got Rico's support, 3 clean months, and stable housing. But she's got biology and a completed program. It comes down to what the judge believes is best for Isaiah. Can he testify? He can, she said, but I don't recommend it. Putting a child on the stand can be traumatic. I thought about Isaiah's nightmares. The way he flinched at sudden sounds. No, I said. We're not doing that to him. Then we work with what we have, Maya replied. Be at the courthouse at 9. And wear something without patches. I found Isaiah in the yard, throwing a tennis ball against the wall. Over and over. Hey, I called. He turned. Yeah. There's a hearing next week. About you. He walked over slowly, gripping the ball. What's a hearing? It's where a judge decides what happens next. Where you live. Who takes care of you. His face went blank, that familiar shield dropping into place. My mom's gonna win, isn't she? I don't know, I said honestly. But I'm gonna fight like hell to keep you safe. Whatever that looks like. He stared at the ball. If I have to go back, his voice cracked. You won't be alone, I said. Even if the judge rules against me, I'm not disappearing. Visits. Calls. Whatever they allow. You hear me? He nodded, tears slipping down his face. I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled him into a hug. He stiffened for a second, then broke, sobbing into my leather vest. We stood there while the sun sank behind the trees, a broken man and a broken kid holding on like we were the only solid things left. When he pulled away, he wiped his face. Thank you. My voice came out rough. Nothing to thank me for yet, kid. But inside my chest, something I thought had died a long time ago flickered back to life. Hope. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Isaiah sat in the front row beside Rico, hands folded, eyes distant. When the judge asked why I wanted guardianship, I didn't dress it up. I didn't rehearse anything. I told the truth. That Isaiah deserved someone who would show up. Every single day, the gavel came down. Temporary guardianship granted. 6 months to prove myself. Isaiah turned and looked at me. And for the first time in weeks, he smiled. Outside, under a sky fading purple into night, I knelt and met his eyes. Ready to go home? I asked. He nodded. And for the first time in my life, I understood what that word really meant. If this story touched you, hit subscribe and join our family, because sometimes the people who save us are the ones we least expect.